who joins us. Good evening and welcome to The Full View. What's the sense that you're getting from Washington at the moment?
Well, I can safely say that few of us here in Washington expected to start the new year this way. The question on everybody's lips here is whether or not the Trump administration has lost control of the chain reaction and international political mayhem that has been unleashed as a result of this killing by the U.S. administration, at the order of the U.S. administration and President Trump, of Qasem Soleimani. President Trump's central assertion was that he has now protected Americans and America from imminent threats that were faced by Soleimani. That was his defense and his evidence that there were tangible threats against Americans. But I think that assertion is very much under scrutiny here, with critics of President Obama questioning the short-term strategy and the long-term strategy, and wondering whether the U.S. is now even more isolated, even more exposed, and even more vulnerable, and certainly looking at its alliances across the Atlantic, whether or not those have hemorrhaged.
Yeah, and on the other end, you have Donald Trump, who's of course not backing down, and I see just about 3 hours ago, he tweeted that Iran will never have a nuclear weapon.
Yes, I mean, Iran clearly backing away from its nuclear obligations, basically walking out on this deal that European allies have been very hard working at trying to keep it all together. President Trump, of course, fulfilling his campaign promise some time ago and turning his back on that nuclear deal. There is this threat from President Trump also that if Iran seeks revenge or reprisals, that the U.S. could hit cultural sites and even civilian targets. That message not going down well, and Capitol Hill in uproar, especially with Democrats enraged that President Trump has taken unilateral action without consulting lawmakers on the Hill. Republican supporters of President Trump accusing Democrats of hypocrisy, saying you can't proceed with an impeachment trial and at the same time complain that you haven't been consulted over military action in the Middle East.
And that's something that Donald Trump himself also tweeted about earlier on as well, speaking about that the Congress and the president should not be wasting time with this impeachment. And he says that 196-0 was the Republican House vote. We got 3 dams, he says. This was not what the founders had in mind. So is this Trump using what's currently happening at a global geopolitical space as trying to push the politicians in the U.S. from this impeachment process?
Well, certainly his critics accuse President Trump of classic distraction tactics. I think the real question here is at what political, military and civilian cost if the U.S. is indeed on the brink of war or further military standoff with Iran. I mean, he has put the U.S. by consensus and according to experts, the U.S. in a very dangerous position and its assets overseas if Iran were indeed to take any sort of reprisal action, and has upped the ante considerably. From the House, we've heard from House Speaker Nancy Pelosi saying that a resolution would be introduced and voted on this week, which would essentially stop President Trump from taking further military action within 30 days. But that action and that legislation is not expected to win the support of Republicans. And for now, impeachment proceedings on hold. We've heard from President Trump's former National Security Advisor, John Bolton, saying he would testify if he is subpoenaed in an impeachment trial. But that doesn't really get us much further along, given the fact that the world's attention and the domestic focus here in Washington is now very much on what Iran does next and what the U.S. administration is planning to do next, without any real long-term strategy in sight.
Well, thank you so much, Nina Maria Potts, who's joining us from Washington.